Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the internet, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and I might be talking a little bit funny because a number of years ago, I had just a little minor injury, broke a tooth, so I had a crown put on, and it was just a little while ago, the damn crown fell out, and my mouth feels really weird, and I'm talking really weird, and it's odd. But anyway, we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about here today in the world of movies and movie news and all sorts of stuff. I mean, obviously, we got the Chris Hardwick situation. Going to talk a little bit about the Lucifer situation and all that kind of good stuff. Of course, then we got emails from you guys, the viewers, and then we're going to take some time for some live questions. So let's dive right into it and get to today's movie news feed. First up, just before the weekend hit, the amazing news came that Netflix has stepped in to pick up the canceled Fox show Lucifer for season 4. Based on the Vertigo character, Lucifer is the story of the original fallen angel, the devil. Bored and unhappy as the Lord of Hell, Lucifer Morningstar abandoned his throne and vacations in Los Angeles, where he has teamed up with Los Angeles Police Department Detective Chloe Decker to take down criminals as an extension of his overwhelming desire to keep punishing the guilty, and is constantly looking for ways to, stick it to his dad. Now, season 3 of Lucifer ended on, well, pardon the pun, one hell of a cliffhanger, and just made its cancellation by Fox even more frustrating. There is currently no word on when Netflix is planning on launching the show on the digital network as of yet. Yeah, it's been a really happy weekend for this guy. I love this show. And I was late in getting on board with it. I think it was probably about halfway through season 1 before I even checked out the first episode because honestly, it looks stupid. And I think I can excuse and understand why a lot of people have never checked it out. It looks dumb. A show about the devil who's vacationing in Los Angeles. It just sounds ridiculous. And I remember I only watched one episode because literally I was bored one night and had nothing else to watch. I was already caught up on just about everything else. And I had somebody tell me that Lucifer's pretty good, so I checked it out. Absolutely fell in love with it. And this guy, Tom Ellis, the actor who plays Lucifer, while Lucifer is not my absolute favorite show on television, this character, as portrayed by Tom Ellis, has become my favorite character in all of television. He's completely magnetizing, you're just drawn to him right away when he's on screen. And I love the way they play with mythology in the show. And it's interesting, and the surrounding supporting cast is really very strong too. I particularly love his brother Medidil and Mazikeen, his little demon, former assistant. Now she's like a bounty hunter, whatever. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but this show is great. And it had better ratings than some other shows on Fox that got renewed, which was just even more perplexing to me. I am so happy because we heard last week that Amazon was in talks with them. And I thought, if Amazon's talking to them, maybe some other networks will get interested too. Look, I think Netflix, I would have been perfectly happy with them on Amazon. Believe me, perfectly happy, or just about anywhere. But Netflix is a great home for it. And the one thing I'm wondering about now is, I wonder if they will dare to explore some R-rated material. I mean, it's on Netflix now. They can if they wish. And Lucifer is a little bit of a heathen. He loves getting into his more, let's say, pleasures of the flesh stuff. And I just wonder if they might feel a little more free to explore that a bit, or if they'll want to keep it really PG just the way it was on Fox. But whatever the case is, I'm just happy the show's coming back. Next up, we knew that Incredibles 2 had a shot at taking down the all-time animated opening weekend box office record from fellow Pixar film Finding Dory, but it has just absolutely destroyed it. Incredibles 2 has taken in $180 million on its opening weekend, making it currently the 8th largest opening weekend of any movie in history, and easily beating out Finding Dory's previous animated opening weekend record of $135 million. Like I said, it didn't just beat the previous record, it annihilated it. The new box office record holder is enjoying tremendous success as it not only set the new opening weekend record, but it's also enjoying a 94% Rotten Tomatoes critic rating and a perfect A+ CinemaScore audience rating. Yes, the movie is incredible. For you guys who've been watching my show, you guys know ever since I saw The Incredibles last week, I have been buzzing about this film. I adored it. And I'm still not really sure. I talked about this on the spoiler discussion the other day. I'm still not 100% sure if I think it's better than the first Incredibles. Incredibles 1 is one of those films where it got better the more times you watch it. And I feel now that I've seen Incredibles 2 twice, I feel it is also getting better the more times I watch it. So I've seen Incredibles 1 a lot more times. I'm still not sure which one I love. What can be said easily is that both of these movies are amazing. Incredibles 2 was 14 years coming, and it was well worth the wait. And apparently, a hell of a lot of people have been waiting for this thing. $180 million opening. Okay, so let's take the animated part of it and put it aside. It makes it the 8th largest opening weekend in film history, edging out Captain America Civil War. That's right. Incredibles 2 just beat out Captain America Civil War's opening weekend box office record by something like $800,000, like really the tiniest of margins. But still, it's significant to point out. Now, let's talk about for a second the animated thing. To come in and beat the record by that much is just mind-boggling. The previous record, keep that in context, at Finding Dory was $135 million, largest opening weekend ever. This one comes in $45 million on top of that. Again, it didn't just beat the record, it obliterated it. Now, the question becomes, what kind of legs is Incredibles 2 going to have? Other animated films that have opened to much less than this have gone on to join the $1 billion club. I think at this point it's probably fair to say it probably will too, because everybody is loving this movie. It's gonna have terrific legs. There's not another, kid-friendly movie or really kid-targeted movie that's coming out anytime in the immediate future. So this thing's going to be huge. It's going to have a number of weeks to itself. I think it's going to join the $1 billion club, and it couldn't happen to a better movie. And I think it might even be my second or third favorite film of the year. Like I've said this before, I still think A Quiet Place is my number one film of the year so far, but Incredibles 2 has to be up there. It's just fantastic. Next up, one of the most anticipated movies that still hasn't opened yet this year, Aquaman, has been the center of a lot of speculation recently on when the first official trailer may drop. With all the recent images and magazine covers, some have speculated it could drop any day, myself included. But now, director James Wan has officially announced that the new trailer will debut at San Diego Comic-Con next month. Wan wrote the following on his Twitter account, accompanied by the new official logo. Comic-Con will be insane, Wan wrote on Twitter. This is the new glyph/logo, freshly smuggled out of Atlantis, stolen off King Orm's belt buckle. Warner Brothers' Aquaman is currently set to hit theaters on December 21st. Now, a lot of us have thought for some time that they would probably be targeting Comic-Con as the best time to really come out big, make a splash, no pun intended, with the Aquaman trailer. However, in recent days, we heard that it debuted at a film festival in Europe, and that was confirmed. It did do that. Then we saw these official images drop, and usually that's the forerunner of an official trailer dropping. So some people like myself start thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe it won't come out at Comic-Con. Maybe it'll come out earlier than that. Certainly no later than Comic-Con. But now James Wan has made it official. It's coming out at Comic-Con, and I think this is a great move by Warner Brothers, because we already know, number one, it's the best place to debut a comic book movie trailer. That's just obvious. But the other thing is this, is that with Marvel not having a big presence at Comic-Con this year, Marvel not having a big Hall H or anything like that, the fruit is ripe for Warner Brothers to come in and just dominate Comic-Con and really lead all the headlines. And by making the decision to hold off, I know a lot of us are getting impatient waiting for it, but in making the decision to hold off that Aquaman trailer until Comic-Con, it pretty much guarantees it will make the big splash, again, no pun intended, the big splash of Comic-Con. I mean, who knows? They might decide to drop some other thing. I'm sure we'll probably get some first look at Shazam footage as well. Whether or not they'll drop a trailer, who knows? But at least get a look at some footage. They're going to come out and go big and go hard. And I think by announcing that they're going to launch a trailer there, they have just sent out a message to everybody that, hey guys, DC is going to have a huge, strong presence at Comic-Con this year. I expect to see Wonder Woman 2 footage. I expect to see Shazam footage. Maybe we'll even finally get a release date from Matt Reeves and Warner Bros. Regarding, and some firmed up plans regarding the future of Batman. Who knows? We've been waiting an awful long time for some official notification on this. Maybe they'll do that. It just looks like they're sending out a message saying, guys, DC is taking Comic-Con very seriously this year, and by holding off the Aquaman trailer until Comic-Con, they're making that message loud and clear. And finally, geek culture icon Chris Hardwick, who started Nerdist and hosts a number of programs, including The Walking Dead's post-show called The Talking Dead, came under fire this week when his former girlfriend of 3 years went online to describe a relationship riddled with emotional and sexual abuse. It's important to note that Hardwick has denied the allegations, but in response to the controversy, AMC has released the following statement. We have had a positive working relationship with Chris Hardwick for many years. We take the troubling allegations that surfaced yesterday very seriously. While we assess the situation, talking with Chris Hardwick will not air on AMC. On top of that, Hardwick has also been pulled from his panel hosting responsibilities for both AMC and BBC America at the upcoming Comic-Con. Okay, now look, this is the type of story that I normally do not like to cover at all. However, because of the space that we all kind of inhabit here, on top of the fact that a lot of people know that I worked for a short time with Chris Hardwick's ex-girlfriend, the one in question, Chloe Dykstra. She was actually on my show, Film HQ, that I did for a while for one season on the Comic-Con HQ network. So a lot of people have been asking me, John, what do you think about these allegations? What do you think about these allegations? So I wanted to at least make a little bit of a comment here. And here's my comment to this. Number one, I have met Chris Hardwick a couple of times. I doubt he would even remember me. I have met Chris Hardwick only on a couple of occasions. And I've got to say, he was always very nice. He always seemed very nice to me. He always seemed very genuine to me. Obviously, I've met Chloe Dykstra. I've worked with her a little bit. I wouldn't say we were friends or anything like that, but she was super sweet. I really enjoyed working with her. I think she's great. I think she's wonderful. Who do I believe? Who cares? It doesn't matter what I believe. It doesn't matter anything like this. Now, it's created a real rock in this whole nerd community because, you know, Chris Hardwick is kind of one of the faces of the whole geek culture community. Whether you love him or not, I mean, there's no denying that. He is one of the primary faces of the geek culture. So what should happen in a situation like this? What do we think about AMC at least putting out a statement like this saying, for now, we're not going to air him on our shows until we look into this. They're pulling him off Comic-Con. Now, there are some people who are saying things like, and understandably so, but they're saying things like, you know, AMC shouldn't do anything. He should be considered innocent until proven guilty and all this kind of stuff. However, that ignores a couple of things. The first thing it ignores is that AMC is not a court of law. They are a private business. And as a private business, they have to do what is best for their business. That's just what they need to do. AMC is also not Chris Hardwick's family. I mean, sometimes we think of these people in working relationships as family, but the reality is they are an employer who pay Chris Hardwick money to perform a service as long as it benefits the company. The moment it stops benefiting the company, or the moment it becomes let's say, a drawback to the company, the moment it becomes a liability to the company, well, the company's going to want to sever that relationship. Understandable. I mean, I've worked with companies before. That's always been the case. I've performed a service for them that is of benefit to them, and in return, they pay me money, and I'm employed by them because I benefit them. The moment I become a liability, they would probably want to part ways with me. Understandably so. Because once again, AMC is not his family. They're an employer. They're not there to look out for Chris Hardwick. They're there to look out for what is best for their company. That's their responsibility. So AMC is not a court of law. This is not about finding somebody guilty until proven innocent or finding somebody innocent until it's not about anything. This isn't a court of law. This is a company doing what is best for them at the moment. It also creates an interesting scenario because I'm hearing a lot of people online, understandably so, who are concerned about this, saying things like, there's no proof, we shouldn't even talk. Well, the problem is that saying things like that kind of looks past the fact that in abusive relationships, there is no proof. That's why for decades, women have often had to live in silence when they've been abused by either employers or a partner or something like that, because what proof do you expect there to exist? As long as the abusive person is doing it behind closed doors, there is no proof. And that's why we've had this really difficult situation. Now, it creates a very complicated, difficult scenario for all of us. On the one hand, let's assume for a moment that Chris Hardwick is completely innocent, okay? We live in this culture right now where somebody can just decide they want to make an allegation and that guy's life could be destroyed. Whether it's true or not, that guy's life could be destroyed. So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, let's assume for a moment that Chloe Dykstra is being completely accurate. We live in a culture that for decades and decades and decades and decades just took an automatic assumption that women aren't worth listening to. And there have been abusive relationships where there's no proof because there's no really way to prove it most of the time. So you have this really awful catch-22 that we as a society and we as a culture have still not figured out how do we sort through this. And we're probably a long ways away from sorting through it. It does highlight for us that there is a massive problem we all face. How for too long the answer has just been, ignore the accuser. We do run the risk of going, ignore the alleged perpetrator here. Let's just assume they're guilty. Or let's just assume they're not. I mean, we're in a really tough spot here. I don't pretend to have the answers. I absolutely don't have the answers. That's why I'm not a judge. But I don't have the answers, and I think a lot of us are just going to have to look in the mirror and understand we don't have the answers either. This is a difficult situation. So when everybody, I've had a lot of people on Twitter writing me and say, whose side do you take in this? I'm not taking any sides in this. I'm just going to say I acknowledge this is a horrible situation. Whether it's true or not, it's a horrible situation. If it's true, it's horrible what the ex-girlfriend had to go through. If it's not, it's horrible what Chris Hardwick has to go through. It's a terrible situation that unfortunately has had the groundwork laid for it by decades and decades and decades of men being able to physically and sexually abuse women without any ramifications. And so now we find ourselves in this very tricky situation. So a lot of people have been asking me to comment on the situation, and my comment is basically this. It's a horrible situation, and there are no winners here, let alone us, the people in the pop culture, who are just trying to figure out how to make heads or tails out of any of this stuff. And that'll do it for today's installment of the Movie News Feed. All right, guys, now we're all caught up on all that stuff. Now, look, I know there's probably a lot of discussion to be had here about this whole thing, particularly the Chris Hardwick thing. A lot of people have some very strong opinions. A lot of people have some very fair opinions. A lot of people have some very strong opinions based on no information at all. But, I mean, it is just a really tricky situation, and I'm sure we're going to probably get to that in some of the live questions. But for now, let's go to the main topics, which are topics submitted by you guys. Now, how do you get a topic submitted on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep the emails to 90 words or less. Once again, email me, john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, keep the emails to 90 words or less. All right, let's get things started with the first email today. And the first email today comes to us from Blu-Ray Billy, who writes, Hey, John, do you think James Cameron is getting too far ahead of himself with Avatar movies? If Avatar 2 flops, what does that mean for the other Avatar sequels? All right, well, it's funny. A lot of people are still asking this question. James Cameron himself actually addressed this about a month or two ago. Right now, they are developing, as we all know, 4 Avatar sequels, which is crazy. They are actively shooting back-to-back 2 Avatar sequels. Now, James Cameron talked about this situation. He said, look, yes, we're moving forward on 4 of them, but, he said, if the first 2 films come out and they don't do well, then we're not doing 3 and 4. Now, how that fits in with all the scheduling and everything they're looking at right now, well, that remains to be seen. But even Cameron himself said, look, if the first 2 don't do well, the first 2 are coming out in theaters. And let's be realistic here. The first Avatar sequel is not going to flop. It's not going to be a $2 billion movie like the first one, but no way is it going to flop. It's not going to come out and make $250 million, you know? It's going to minimum in its sleep make $700 million automatically. I mean, so it is not going to flop by any stretch of imagination. But hey, what if it does come out and make $700 million, and then Avatar 3, the second sequel, comes out and makes like $300 million? Okay, then James Cameron addressed that. He said, well, then, you know, obviously we're not going to be moving forward with 3 and 4. These are unlikely scenarios, to say the least. But like I said, he himself has addressed the situation before. All right, let's move on now to the next email. I'm telling you guys, it is weird talking right now with my crown falling out. I look like a Canadian hockey player. All right, next email today comes to us from T. Hayes, who writes, this email might be a little late considering Comcast's strong bid for Fox, but if Disney buys Fox, do you think that they will keep them as a separate studio? This is the approach they took with Lucasfilm and Marvel Studios. Okay. This whole Comcast drama is awesome. I'm loving this whole Comcast Disney Fox drama. All right, let's look at it this way. I believe that the indications we've gotten from Comcast is that if Comcast wins Fox, they're just going to keep Fox together, much like they did with Universal Studios. Fox, 20th Century Fox, the movie studio, will stay intact and just continue to operate. But what if Disney takes it over? I don't think that's the same situation for Disney. I think Disney is going to basically dismantle it for parts, including all the IP and properties and all that kind of stuff that they can take and use. As a matter of fact, Bob Iger's already kind of said that he plans on taking the X-Men and putting them in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that takes it out of Fox and all that kind of stuff. And we know with Disney launching their streaming service, they want to grab a bunch of Fox's IP and use it for the streaming services as well. So while I've not heard any definitive answer on Disney, my assumption at this point, which could be wrong, but my assumption at this point is that Disney's going to dismantle it. Now, you brought up things like Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm. Those are totally different situations. Fox is a big major studio. Marvel makes Marvel movies. That's it. Lucasfilm makes Star Wars movies right now, and maybe they'll get into Indiana Jones, but basically that's it. They are very finite, specialized little studios. Much like Pixar is a specialized, finite studio. Marvel's putting out 3 movies per year. Lucasfilm's going to put out 1 or 2 movies per year. Pixar's going to put out 2 to 3 movies per year. Fox is putting out 40 movies per year. Or 20 to 40, whatever the number is. Big enough. They are a big major umbrella studio. Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar, these are all specialized studios that just focus on certain movies. So you can't compare the Lucasfilm and Marvel situation to a Fox, right? They are 2 totally different situations. So why they did keep Lucasfilm intact and let it keep operating, and same with Pixar and same with Marvel, it would be a different situation for Fox. I think they'll span it. I think Comcast keeps it intact and lets it just keep operating, which is why X-Men and Deadpool and Fantastic Four would stay at Fox if Comcast ends up taking it over and not revert back to Marvel. But I haven't heard Bob Iger say this officially, but right now it looks like Disney would dismantle Fox and just redistribute its properties. So that would seem to be their philosophy. All right, let's move on to the final email today, and then we'll go over to your live questions. And the final email today comes to us from Scott, who writes, with the recent director drama, Singer, Lord and Miller, and Snyder, what is the job of a director after the camera stops rolling? Understanding the director is pushing actors to get the best performance, setting the tone, etc., while shooting and setting aside studio meddling. How much does the director do when it comes to going through all the films shot and piecing the film together? The answer is normally everything. The answer is normally the director is overseeing every step and stage of the production of a film. Normally. Now, there are exceptions. There are different situations, absolutely. But generally speaking, normally, the director oversees every step of the production right up until the moment it's released. That means overseeing and approving all the edits, the post-production, the sound, the visual effects, everything. The soundtrack even. That all falls under the purview of the director. Normally. Now, there are certain situations where, we've heard a director shoot and then a director's taken off a project and somebody else oversees the post-production and all that. That all happens, absolutely. But generally speaking, it is the director who oversees everything. Yes, the cinematographer is shooting the movie, but he's shooting the movie under the direction of the director. Yes, the actor is acting in the movie, but they're acting under the direction of the director. Yes, the editor is editing the movie, but it's also done under the direction of the director. So normally speaking, the director kind of heads everything up. Again, lots of different situations where there are exceptions to that, absolutely. But generally speaking, that's the way that kind of works. All right, with all that out of the way now, let's go over, we got about 10 minutes left here, and take some of your live questions. And we're going to start off your live questions with the first one coming to us from Manuel Fernandez, who writes, have you ever seen Charmed? And will you watch the CW reboot? I didn't like the trailer for it, but I'm still going to give it a shot. Fans of the original, however, have been furious about this reboot. I've been hearing, all about it. I was actually sort of involved with somebody with the first Charmed show. And then recently I had Erin Cummings on here. You remember I did that 2-part interview with Erin Cummings. And that's where she got her first big paid feature guest spot thing, was on the original show Charmed. So there's that connection as well. I think I might have seen a couple of episodes. It's not a show that's designed for me. So, I have no desire nor any plans to watch any of the new Charmed show. It's clearly not something that's up my alley. But that has nothing to do with whether the trailer looks good or not. And it certainly has nothing to do with any of the controversy. I have read about how a lot of fans of the original show are upset and all this kind of stuff. Who cares? I mean, let the show start, and then it'll either succeed or fail because it's either good or bad. And if it's good, great. If it's bad, oh well, lots of new shows come out that are bad and they get canceled pretty quick. So it'll succeed or fail based on that. And I think everybody needs to take a breath, actually watch the first episode, and then decide. Maybe it sucks. Maybe it's good. I have no plans on watching it just because I never had any plans on watching it. There are lots of shows that come out that I don't watch. And that's going to be one. The New Charmed is going to be one of those shows that I plan on not watching. But just because it's obviously I'm not its target audience. All right. Punto Baby 1 writes, have you ever seen Adam Sandler's Reign Over Me? It's his best acting performance and a very deep, underrated movie, in my opinion. Keep up the great work. Well, I talk about that movie all the time. I talk about Reign Over Me all the time. It is by far Adam Sandler's best acting performance. I actually contend and argue quite often that maybe not win, but I thought Adam Sandler actually should have been nominated for an Oscar for that performance. I thought he was, and I think the movie is great. By the movie Reign Over Me is fantastic. And whenever I think about that movie, it just makes me lament more and more and more that Adam Sandler continues to do these really crappy comedies instead of just throwing himself full-fledged into dramatic acting, because he's really good. When he does straight-up dramatic parts, he's actually really quite good. And I think Reign Over Me was like that first flare in the air that made me go, holy crap, this dude's awesome when it comes to that stuff. So, yeah, I talk about Reign Over Me all the time, man. James Welsh writes, Return of the King won 13 Oscars. No, it won 11, actually. It was not nominated for Best Sound Mixing. Yes, it was. And actually, it won Best Sound Mixing, if I'm not mistaken. Or Cinematography. You're correct. It was not nominated for Cinematography. Why, in my opinion, it should have had a shot to win both of those. Yeah, it did win Best Sound Mixing. I know that. Cinematography was not nominated. It was a very strong year. I remember a lot of discussions that year, those Oscars. I think it was the Oscars was 2004, 2005, something like that. There was a lot of discussion about the cinematography thing, but I remember it was a very strong field that year for cinematography, and it didn't get one of the nominations. Oh well. It won 11 Academy Awards. No film in history has ever won more Academy Awards than Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. So it did fine. But yeah, cinematography. There was a lot of discussion about cinematography. You're not the only one, James. Not at all. Jack Reacher writes, you're truly doing a great job. Thank you so much, Jack. Keep it up. I'm glad Incredibles 2 did so incredible, because Jurassic World will chomp it at the box office this weekend. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. Was the first Jurassic... Look, nobody expects Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom to equal the ridiculous success of the first Jurassic World. That was completely unexpected. It way overperformed. So nobody with any common sense is expecting it to do the same. But how successful will it be? Will it open to like $150 million, which would be crazy if it did? And it's coming out on just Incredibles 2's second weekend, and Incredibles 2 is getting incredible word of mouth. It will take a big bite out of Incredibles 2, absolutely. I expect Incredibles 2 to probably take a 60% drop on week 2, despite its positive word of mouth, because I think a lot of people have been waiting to go out to see the new Jurassic World and see what all the fuss is about. By the way, I think the new Jurassic World's quite good. Nowhere near as good as the original Jurassic Park, but I think it's the best Jurassic Park movie since the original. That's not really saying a lot, but I do think it's the best Jurassic Park movie since the first Jurassic Park. So, and there's going to be a lot of interest. A lot of people are going to go see it, so we're just going to have to see how that all works out. Rose Ryan sends in a super chat for support. Thank you so much, Rose. It's very nice of you. Brandon Torres writes, did you see Brie Larson's claim that Ocean's 8 reviews aren't great because it wasn't made for white male critics? I feel that is racist and sexist. I do not believe that's what she actually said. And as a matter of fact, hold on a second. The reviews for Ocean's 8 are actually pretty good. I mean, the last time I checked, it was sitting at 70%. which, I mean, it's a certified fresh rating. So it's a good movie. I know that Brie Larson put out like a statement that people have been misquoting horribly. Like misquoting horribly. Like I remember Brie Larson made a comment. She said something like take a movie like, I think she was talking about A Wrinkle in Time, which I did not like. I didn't think Wrinkle in Time was very good. But she made the statement of, I'm more interested in hearing what a black female critic has to say about that movie rather than what a white male critic has to say about that movie. People then took that and started running with things like, Brie Larson says white male critics' opinions don't matter. It's like, okay, you are purposefully taking and twisting what she said. She said something very specific about a very specific circumstance and just give an opinion on one specific circumstances. And then what people love to do is take quotes like that, completely twist their meanings, and apply them to a broad spectrum when they were never intended like that. So I think people just need to read up a little bit more and very specifically read what she said. She wasn't making big blanket statements or anything like that. She was talking about one specific movie and one specific set of circumstances and what her opinion was on that one finite moment and what she thought about that. And then what people love to do is take that, twist it out of context and present it as something that the original speaker never intended it to say. So we just got to be really, really careful about that. Okay, next one comes to us from Corey Jimenez writes, I finally saw Deadpool 2 and thought it was okay. First one was better. Tone in the first act was all over the place and the jokes felt forced. I still liked it. Well, that's the subjectivity of film, man. I completely disagree. I thought it was fantastic. I don't completely disagree because you liked it and I liked it. So we don't completely disagree. But I thought it was much better than that personally, but that's the subjectivity of film. I thought it had harder humor. I did not think it was all over the place. I thought it was setting the stage for all the multiple levels that the movie takes place on. I thought it was ridiculously good, and I do think I prefer it over the first one. The first one definitely does things, in my opinion, that are better than there are certain elements that the first one does better than the second one. But I thought there were also things that the second one did better than the first, and overall, I think I enjoyed the second one even more. But that's just me. All film's subjective, and that's how you felt about it, and that's how you felt about it. Chris Warden writes, if you'd have told me 2 years ago that a live-action Star Wars film released on Memorial Day would struggle to make $400 million worldwide, I'd have laughed in your face. And I really like Solo. Yeah, Solo's quite good. And I told people before, this film is not going to be $1 billion film. I was pegging it about $700 million. Even I, who had been preaching, look, this movie is not going, I think everybody's overestimating what this movie is going to do. It's a movie nobody asked for, blah, 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 blah. It's not Harrison Ford. All that kind of stuff. But even I wasn't expecting $400 million, which is probably where it's going to limp in around $400 million. And make no mistake, this movie's going to lose the studio a lot of money. Normally, $400 million would be a break-even point, even for a big budget film. But this film's budget ballooned way out of control because they practically shot this movie twice. And that's going to take an effect on the checkbook. It's a movie that never should have been made, in my opinion. But hey, it is. And I think there's going to be lessons taught on this in film school. I really do. Or at least in business school when it comes to entertainment. Corey follows up. My folks saw Will You Be My Neighbor. They loved it. Want to see it this week. Your thoughts if you've seen it. It's incredible. It's everything I wanted it to be and more. The world today needs Mr. Rogers more than ever before. And it's crazy. I think this movie should be required viewing for in schools, in colleges. It's just really eye-opening, and it reintroduces us to this guy who, in a world of artificial images and in a world of headlines and everything, the fact that a man like Mr. Rogers existed gives you a little bit more hope in humanity. If you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it right away. Watch it right away. Koba writes, where did Koba go? Koba writes, thank you, Netflix. Oh, damn, Koba. Thank you, Netflix, indeed. Already a big Netflix fan, but even more so now than ever before. Corey Jimenez says, how did you do at the No, it was not the WPT in Vegas. It was the WSOP. It was the World Series of Poker. The World Poker Tour and the WSOP, the World Series of Poker, are two different things. The World Series of Poker is like the big granddaddy. The World Poker Tour is a very major poker tour. I went and played in the World Series. I go playing it every year. Did not do as well this year as I did a couple years ago because I have a strategy. I don't buy into the $10,000 tournament. What I do is I go in and buy in at a $250 tournament. So there's this tournament you can buy in for just $250. And then if I cash or do, finish high enough up that I actually win money, then I take those winnings and buy into a bracelet event, which is like $1,500, $2,000 to buy into. And then if I do well in that, then I'll go in and play in the main event. I played in a daily deep stack at the WSOP. It was a $250 buy-in. And I think they said there were something like 1,800 players. And I got knocked out in level 7. So I finished in the top 700 or something like that, but nowhere near cashing. I didn't make any money on it. So not nearly as well. I mean, I did okay, but I didn't do nearly as well as I did a few years ago. So, yeah, not the most successful one, but I love it every year. I love going there. The circus atmosphere of it all. I just adore it. Okay. Let's see. New Heathen writes, great show. If Comcast offer is accepted over Disney, how will this affect the future of the X-Men Fantastic Four movies? Will Disney still be able to make them? No, Disney will not be able to make them because the rights to Fantastic Four and X-Men will stay with 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox will still exist if Comcast wins. It's just that they'll have a new owner, much like they took over Universal, and Universal just still existed and continued to own all their IP. If 20th Century Fox is kept intact, they still have the X-Men and Fantastic Four and Deadpool rights. And the assumption at this point is they'll just continue on business as normal as it's always been, which is the way I kind of hope it works out. That's the way I hope it works out. Third Man writes, I can't take these Star Wars YouTube trolls who say Kathleen Kennedy is a secretary and not a real producer. Fandom is toxic and don't realize how hateful they are. Well, anybody who says that Kathleen Kennedy is a secretary, not a real producer, that what they're saying is that they know the business better than Steven Spielberg does. And they're saying they know the business better than George Lucas does. Spielberg has said on multiple occasions he thinks Kathleen Kennedy is the most gifted producer he's ever worked with. Remember, Kathleen Kennedy spent decades working as a producer with Steven Spielberg. George Lucas handpicked her to be the head of Lucasfilm. Now, do I feel it's time for her to step down? I do. But that's mostly because of the managing of the director fiascos. I mean, 4 movies in, 4 major director turnovers. That's her most important job, in my opinion. So for that and some other reasons I listed, I do believe it's time for her to step down. But make no mistake, anybody who's saying stuff like that clearly is just clueless and is just speaking to say words. Again, unless they know better than Steven Spielberg does. I mean, maybe they think they are smarter in this business than Spielberg, so we'll have to see. Julius Goodwin writes, you called me Justin, my name is Julius, when I sent a message. Oh, sorry about that, Julius, I don't remember. I'm curious, what will Aquaman's success or failure have on the DCU going forward? I think 0. I think 0. Because I think the new head of the DCEU, Walter Hamada, I believe he has a plan. And I don't think that plan is going to be altered one bit by how good or how bad Aquaman does. I think Aquaman can be a tremendous flop and it'll have 0 impact on Hamada's plan. I think it can be a huge success and I think it'll have 0 impact on Hamada's plan. And I think we're still a full year away from really seeing what Hamada's full plan is. But I honestly don't think, and I think Aquaman can be quite good. I mean, you got James Wan directing it. I love Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I mean, we're hearing decent things about it. I'm really looking forward to this movie. But no matter how much of a disappointment or how much of an incredible success it is, I believe it'll have 0 impact on whatever Walter Hamada's plan is. Let's see. James Peter writes, no, you ain't watching, but great World Cup. Yeah, I'm not watching it. I mean, they had it on a big screen during the World Series of Poker, so I watched a little bit of it. But yeah, not a big soccer fan. Only watch it to watch Italy or the U.S. or Canada, and none of them are in the World Cup. So there you go. Let's see. Last 2 questions here. Sean Donahue writes, during Ragnarok, the Grandmaster makes it seem like he's never heard of Thor when Valkyrie tries to sell him to him. He's an elder. How hasn't he heard of the son of Odin? Well, because he's been there for so long. He's been there for a very long time, and the galaxy's a big place. So I think, remember, I mean, they even hint in the movie about how long he's been on. And this world is isolated. The way Thor Ragnarok sets it up is that this world is pretty much isolated from the rest of the universe, right? For the most part. It's isolated from everywhere else. It's where all the things that are cast away. So I think it's I think it totally makes sense that he says he's never heard of him. Because, again, it's not like Sakaar is a part of the universal community. It's very, very isolated. So, yeah, I've never really questioned that, to be honest with you. Last question today. And by the way, guys, if you sent in a live question that I don't have time to get around to, don't worry. I will take these and use them in a companion video probably tomorrow morning, maybe Wednesday morning. Keep your eye open for that. So I will get to your question. It'll just have to be in a companion video. Final question of the day. Devontae Brown writes, really like Jennifer Lawrence, but disagree on her comments a while back, saying she's purposely rude to avoid fans in public. Your take? I don't know. I didn't hear the comment. Don't care. Yeah, like I said, I don't know the comment. I didn't read the comment, so I can't comment on the comment. So yeah, I got nothing to kind of offer that. All right, guys, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, guys, hey, listen, if you're here, why don't you take a second, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're following me on Twitter, simply @JohnCampea. And don't forget, guys, a little bit later this afternoon at 2 p.m., we will have open mic, just taking all open questions from you guys. We just did it for a few minutes. We've taken almost like 45 minutes to an hour every afternoon, just taking all open discussion questions, talking about the entertainment industry. Make sure you come back and join us for that. All right, guys, that will do it for me. My name's John Campea. Thanks so much for joining us. Until my next video, bye-bye.